I think everyone should come out. Not come out as an announce that you're gay. I don't think you owe anyone that. I mean, live a life that is fully your own. Showing up as you are. If your siblings are showing up with their little hetero partners, you're showing up with your little gay partner.
Yeah.
No explanations, no big conversation about it. You're doing what you're doing. I'm doing what I'm doing.
As people of diasporic origin, living authentically means delving deep into our cultural legacy burdens. At Rich Queer Aunties, we go beyond financial success, embracing rich insights, truth, and authenticity. Join me, Christabel, a nurse leader, writer, and African auntie, as I share insights and practical resources such as self-care strategies, mindfulness practices, and deep cultural analysis. Drawing from my experiences overcoming a controlling religious and traditional African background to embracing life as an openly gay woman, I've gathered knowledge to help you live fully and authentically. Each episode aims to help you uncover your subconscious narratives, prioritize your mental health, and nurture a meaningful community that truly reflects who you are. We'll explore how merging our heritage of collectivism with individualism can lead to a peaceful state of interdependence. Consider this podcast your sanctuary to redefine success, discover joy in the everyday, and reshape the narratives that have defined you. Stay connected and deepen your journey by joining our community on Instagram or engage with our discussions on Substack. Let's explore what it means to live authentically together.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. It's Christabel
and Kachi.
We're going to be talking about something quite different for us. We are not a pop culture podcast, but everyone has been talking about Severance. I haven't watched the show. Kachi, on the other hand, watched it.
So this will be a spoiler for people who have not seen the show.
I wanted to talk about it because when Kachi was telling me about the premise of the show, I thought it really resonated with the work that we do surrounding being boldly authentic, showing up in the world as yourself, fully integrated, being present.
And building relational skills for you to live.
So tell us about Severance.
So Severance is about this main character named Mark. He works at a company called Lumen.
Okay.
Lumen created this program called the Severance program, where people on the outside get to sever themselves and work in this company so that they don't have to deal with the discomfort of being a full emotion human being, particularly people who've gone through a specific traumatic episode. So most of the characters, including Mark and every other employee in this company, are all going through an episode of grief. Mark lost his wife, Gemma, and he couldn't live continuing to work as a professor. He decided to go through this program so that he can live a full life without having to deal with the grief of losing his loved one.
When you're severed because you went through a traumatic episode and you don't want to live with that grief, you go to work, you don't remember the grief. When you come home from work, that part of yourself, does it remember the grief?
Yes. The only part that doesn't remember the grief is the part of you that has to work. The Severance program was meant to be an escape to not experience the grief 24/7 and be a part of themselves that is brand new. So the show starts off with asking the question, who are you? All of the employees that start the program don't know who they are. The main character, for instance, is part of a team. There's Heliar, Irvin, Dylan, and one character that starts off not being part of the episode. The journey of the main character is that he left his life because he lost someone. He joins the Severance program and realizes that his best friend was also let go of the program. So now he's dealing with
grief
inside. As part of the Severed program, they're building new friendships. They're bonding over the confusion of what did they do at work? Who are they? Who are these new people? So they all get to experience themselves and every emotion brand new.
What I found interesting was that they still experienced the grief outside. So it seemed like the company just wanted them to not feel the grief in order for them to be able to produce.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And this mirrors life in a very weird way. So after watching the show, how do you find that it mirrored real life for you?
I think the program brings to life that there isn't a way to escape your emotions. Your emotions are essentially a guide for you to know who you are and make friendships that can allow you to better reflect your own humanity and to find love and experience compassion and drive, joy and pleasure. Those emotions aren't escapable, but the act of choosing it is really the whole point of the experience.
What do you mean the act of choosing it?
There's a lot of resistance with not wanting to accept one's reality, like not wanting to accept one's past or one's trauma, wanting to escape from it, wanting to not confront difficult emotions with people when it comes to conflict or when relating with another person. But when you are put in a space where all you have to do is confront your feelings, allow yourself to feel through it.
The show is just a metaphor for what we want to talk about. They go to this place to go to work, where theoretically they start from fresh emotions and all that. But here they are facing the emotions again. It reminds me of wherever you go, there you are. Like trying to escape your life by moving to a new country or getting a new job or moving to a new neighborhood. Wherever you go, there you are. You're still going to be faced with the same emotions that you're trying to run away from. So on one hand, it feels like they're being severed, so they're no longer in this agonizing pain 24/7, but they're only encountering new pain, right?
Yeah.
So really, now that I'm thinking of it, the show was really not saying a lot. As in they were in pain the whole time.
Which is the irony of being part of that program. So the program was not designed for them to have that kind of experiences.
Yeah.
But because they were curious to connect with each other, they started opening the veil. Helly would ask Mark, so who are you on the outside? And he would say, does it matter? Miss Corbell, who runs the Severance floor, let Mark know that they let go of PD. He's not coming back. And when Mark started to ask questions, he was shut down. So in his confusion on what happened, he finds a note that his best friend left for him, that there's more to this program that meets the eye. There's more to the job that he's doing, which seems arbitrary, but it ends up leading towards like a bigger program that was more insidious. So them wanting to find out what the company was up to, and it's not what they were telling them, that they realized that them just being a worker wasn't their whole life.
This is why I've always had a pushback with the idea that you need to leave your problems behind. You need to leave the grief you're experiencing behind because you're here to do a work. So sure, we don't have a company that is severing us in this particular way, but the societal conditioning and the messaging we receive around the ways we ought to compartmentalize what we have going on. That's what like really intrigued me about the show, because if you don't question, is this the way this is supposed to be? I think a lot of people live that way, feeling really severed from themselves.
Yeah.
Who they are and how they show up at work is completely different from how they show up at home. No one at work knows what's going on at home.
Yeah.
You could have lost someone and you just come and you do your micro data processing.
Refinement.
Sure. You do your micro data refinement, like you produce, you improve shareholder stocks and stuff. Then you go home and you're in a deep depression at home.
Yeah.
But if we were more integrated, if we can bring that part of ourselves, we would be better off as a society.
I feel like we would have more compassion with ourselves and each other, because the best friend that he lost was actively trying to reintegrate.
What do you mean reintegrate?
In order to be severed, there's this chip that gets installed. in your brain. They drill this tiny little beam that is able to like not wipe out your memory, but it dilates your eyes and creates this illusion of self that feels different. So the process of reintegration is where your outie self and your innie self actually get to talk to each other. You get to see visions of who you are on the outside and on the inside and match those realities together. His best friend was going through that process, but ended up dying because reintegration can be a very hard process on the nervous system. It was an incomplete project. It was still being tested on. It was fully thought out, but I think each individual experiencing reintegration can be hard. He tells Mark about this process to be able to become a full self, because grief was the catalyst that opened up the door for Mark's curiosity inside and for him to be curious to get severed and work at this company.
So I was thinking about how marginalized people learn to fragment themselves in order to stay safe and to be accepted. And we don't only have to do this at work, but we have to do it in our families, in our communities,
in our friendships sometimes.
And we think of things like code switching, assimilation for immigrants, religious trauma, and trying to leave that behind. Queer identity, right? We've talked already about workplace professionalism. These are sometimes necessary things we have to do in order to live the illusion of survival. And it can work in the short term, and many people carry it on their whole lives. We see that in our parents and in people who never come out or who never live openly. It's not even about coming out, but like never live openly, live their truth. They stay severed.
Yeah. Like never being able to accept a part of yourself into your whole identity.
Because they feel like reintegration will literally kill them.
Yeah. The way the show points it out is like physical death, but the way it shows up in our bodies, yes, there are some physical pains that we will carry for the rest of our lives. And there is a psychological dying. Like part of you has to be suppressed and killed in order for the ego or the outer self to be in existence, but not full existence.
No.
It's just enough for you to survive, to feel loved, to be accepted, but not really integrate. Some of the things that like has been coming up for me since I stopped producing for a company and using my creative power to design, I've been realizing how angry I was feeling, how the things I would create was not seen or recognized the way I saw it and recognized it. I wasn't being reflected in people, and people weren't able to reflect what I was seeing in the world. That tension led to a really deep depression for many years. And I'm noticing that I've been constantly grieving about it. I feel like I'm at the part of the cycle where I'm proud of myself to have made a choice to not return to that state of depression and anger, taking charge of my own creative power and putting it towards the things that I love to do, like building cocktails, learning about my history, working with my hands and learning massage therapy, becoming a healer, and allowing my mind to imagine all the things that I can be and learn the skills to be that, and how that was not available when I was like in my 20s and working.
What has been the cost of that integration? Here you are, an engineer working in tech. Your parents are proud of you. You've achieved this thing as a first-gen African daughter. And you're suddenly like, okay, this is severing me from myself, my creative energy, my essence. That's got to cost something to make the decision to say, how can I integrate for my own well-being, for my own sanity?
You mentioned something with like my parents being proud of me. My parents were not proud of me.
When you were working?
When I stopped working.
That's a big cost.
That's a big cost.
Yeah, because we're raised, especially as African women, to really make our parents proud. And that is why so many of us will go through life living in that severed state. I think everyone should come out. Not come out as an announce that you're gay. I don't think you owe anyone that. I mean, live a life that is fully your own, showing up as you are. If your siblings are showing up with their little hetero partners, you're showing up with your little gay partner.
Yeah.
No explanations, no big conversation about it. You're doing what you're doing. I'm doing what I'm doing. Especially if you no longer rely on your parents for your well-being, or you don't live in a country where it is incredibly unsafe to show up in that way. The thing that happens when you hide that part of yourself from the people you want to love you and the people that you love is that it eats you up inside in such a way that you can't even tell what's happening. It affects your relationships with your romantic partners.
Yeah.
It affects how you show up in friendships. For me, that has always felt too high a cost to pay to be severed from myself. But I've understood over the years that sometimes reintegration is too painful and can be deadly for some people. And all that they can do is try to live in that severed state. I found it really interesting because we talk about how beneficial it is to find your people. So the characters begin as blank slates and they slowly access emotions like jealousy, joy, anger. And it made me curious about how we rediscover our emotions after being repressed for so long. What is that journey of reintegration after a really prolonged period of severance from our truest self? You're trying to find yourself. You're trying to find your people. You're connecting to new people who are also asking these questions and having these emotions. How did that feel like for you?
It felt like I had a newfound appreciation for myself. I had to accept that I didn't know myself fully in the ways that I thought that I did. I felt a sense of grief of letting go of this identity that I had built, of this good child who was going to get married to a man, make their parents proud, work at an engineering company. Once I took the risk of accepting that I may not be loved for who I am, and that's okay. It hurts and it feels like shit. Realizing that I'm not going to die and I'm not going to be broken and I'm not going to accept going back into a state where I was miserable just to be loved, not for who I am.
Yeah, they're loving an illusion.
An illusion. And
They're
it's
loving
like,
your severance.
who am I? Yeah, so who am I helping in that experience? No one. In the state of being severed, I felt like my emotions were true, but it wasn't based on truth. It was based on abandonment and rejection. No one's going to like me. Even the relationships that I was in, I didn't feel like I was living myself fully, because if I could express that breadth of emotion, I would be rejected and I wanted to avoid being judged. I would behave in ways to be a part of myself that could be loved. I started to grow my facial hair in 2019. For me, it was an act of acceptance, but really an act of rebellion. I was like, oh, fuck yeah, I am still a woman with facial hair. My ancestors had full beards and they were fully formed beings.
I was going to say, I thought it was funny when you said an act of rebellion, as though you conjured up facial hair that didn't exist previously, so that suddenly you can be rebellious to people. Gosh, this shit already existed. You were just getting rid of it.
I feel like it was a rebellion to my oppressors or to society, like, fuck you.
Yeah.
But really, to me, it was an act of reclamation.
You just
an
decided
act of
to
joy.
stop getting rid of the thing that occurred in your body.
Naturally.
Literally.
So I stopped shaving all my body hair. I stopped waxing it, all of that.
Yeah.
And I was really scared. There's a way my nervous system responds when I feel like I'm being looked at in a judgmental way or in a gentle, caring, tender way. I can sense that. So I was anticipating that people would look at me like, is she okay?
Yeah.
Are they okay? Like, what's going on?
You going mad?
Like,
are you transitioning?
My mother was very angry with me. Like, why are you growing your, why don't you cut this off? And I told her, no, it's fine. Are you trying to, what did they say, transition? You can be a lesbian, but just don't let it show. Like, wow. There's a lot of passion around this. Hair has always been a cause of, is it contention?
Yeah.
Between me and my mother when I started cutting my hair and forming my locks and growing them. She hated it. Any form of expression that would brand me as being different or queer or a lesbian, she was on my back about it. And I would always do it scared anyway, but deep in my spirit and in my body, I felt fine, felt safe.
Yeah.
And I had to remind myself that despite how people experience me, it has nothing to do with me. It has a lot to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to work on separating my emotions from their emotions. Once I learned to identify this is my shit and this is their shit, it helped me easily navigate the world and find my people.
For some people, it is life or death to show up as themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They are dependents. They are in situations or countries where this is illegal, punishable by death. And that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people with agency, independent, no longer physically dependent on their caregivers, and have a measure of safety in a material way where the fear and the pain of not being accepted and not being liked will not physically kill them. It's really, really painful, but it won't kill them.
Yeah.
Because I think that the reason why it's important for people in this situation who have relative safety to consider doing the work of not remaining severed, to consider doing the work of integration, is that for the people that it's actually unsafe for, they need us. I think sometimes it can be very much us-centered. We're doing this for ourselves to heal, to reparent, to find emotional truth and a truth in our expression.
Yeah.
I think that we underplay how valuable us doing that work moves the needle forward for people who are minors in positions of safety. It's what books did for me. It helps you imagine a better world. If living in Nigeria where being queer is penalized by imprisonment and death, see us living openly and truthfully and sharing about our lives. I think that even if they do feel pangs of wistfulness and jealousy or envy, there is this bigger part of themselves that feel alive, that feel hope, that stay alive because they can see that they exist.
Mm-hmm.
I think that for me, that was a big part of undergoing that work, to be rebellious, whatever you want to call it, because I have to use my privilege to speak up, to challenge these gatekeepers of truth and personhood, be it our parents or the cultures we grew up with. What is the use of the privilege I have to be able to live in America or make enough money where I don't depend on my parents if I don't show up, or if I don't put in that work and suffer that relatively minor pain compared to the actual horrible pain and potentially death
Most people, yeah.
people who are dependent are suffering. So I always think about that. What is the relationship between connection with other people who are experiencing the same things that we're experiencing and courage to do something about it?
So when Irving discovers this new department, research and development, he ends up being infatuated with this man. He doesn't understand his feelings. We don't even know that Irving is attracted to men, but he is infatuated with this other character called Bert. And he decides to bring his team from macro data refinement to meet this new group. They've never met each other before.
They kept them separated. I've been talking about this. The empire keeps us fragmented so that we don't gain power. We replicate this in our friendships by keeping it separate and fragmented.
And we develop narratives about the other people as to the reason why we're not
Yeah.
connecting with them.
Yes.
There's this funny story that every department thinks that macro data refinement people have pouches, which doesn't make sense. It's like this
What do you
weird.
mean by pouches?
We don't know what that means. That's what the show is trying to conceptualize, that these people are judged without actually like meeting face to face.
Yeah.
The team realizes that this company is bigger than what they thought. It opens up a new level of curiosity for them. What other departments are there? Because the whole time they believed that they were the only ones part of this program.
So they're actively building courage as they are connected.
Yes, with these tethered emotion, there's rage, there's love, like budding love that's happening with Irvin and Bert. And Mark's sister, who is married to a writer, he's writing this like self-help book for people who need to find the courage within themselves to live life as a full person. And they all start to read it. It starts to galvanize this passion inside of them to dream bigger than who they are, to have the courage to be bold, to be brave, to push back on authority, to question more.
Are we saying that a self-help book is what did it? I don't buy it.
It's like multiple things. They eventually get the courage to collaborate together to figure out what the map that PD left for them meant.
So what does it take to build community with others when you're still healing or unsure of who you are? In the show, they're finding connection with each other. They're learning new emotions. They're trying to figure new things out. They're unsure as they're navigating it. But what makes them continue to somewhat rely on each other?
They had to develop a certain degree of trust in each other, that they're not going to leave, that they'll be there every day. They wanted to form a resistance against their bosses.
So let's bring it back to real life. As you were working on integrating parts of yourself to be whole, to be your truest, authentic self, how did connecting with others give you the courage to continue on that journey? Because I would just speak for myself. My earliest connection with others in my journey to coming out, leaving church, and living a life that was truly mine was I first came out to people at work. I don't know what it was about work that made it feel that I could say, oh, I'm gay. This is my girlfriend. And they were like, oh my gosh, y'all are so cute together. They did not display any weirdness around me. And that gave me the courage to know that there were people in the world who did not think I was broken. It challenged the internalized homophobia I had, that I was inherently broken. It made it clear that not every group of people thought this. And so that helped me gain the courage to challenge those beliefs within myself. So it was like I borrowed courage from them. Did that happen for you?
So being in a new environment for me sparked me wanting to find my people, other queer folks who were expressive, who were artists, because I wanted to dive more into my art practice. I didn't find myself having to come out, but I found myself being able to easily exist, dress the way I want, grow my body hair, and not feel like looked at in a certain way. I moved to Oakland, which is very queer, open, artsy kind of environment. So being in that space let me be, especially because it was a new environment. I wasn't around people that I had known in my past life as an engineer or working in tech. So it felt easeful. It felt easeful to just exist.
But what does it take to build community with others when you're still healing, when you're still unsure, when you're hiding parts of yourself from your family of origin, when you still maybe have internalized homophobia? Like, how does that work?
It takes a bit of bravery and just putting yourself out there. So at the time, I had started my business as a mixologist, and there were events that were popping up around the lake that I thought, okay, there's a lot of people here. They're probably going to be thirsty, probably going to need some nourishment. It would be really nice if I offered that to them. I would set up a table and have my little sign and my drinks and refreshments, and I would vent there. It was an act of putting myself out there and talking to people that made it easier to attract the folks who are also in the path towards like self-care and healing and wellness. I think like one of the things that makes community easier to create is if you have similar interests. I wouldn't say that I was deeply entrenched in knowing every person in those spaces. There may be like a handful of folks who I felt that I was connected to and have shared experiences. It felt nice to be around folks, but I think I still felt challenged building friendships with people who are in similar spaces.
I was going to say that I didn't have access to what you had access to when you came to Oakland for the majority of my healing journey. I was so unsure of myself. I had come to the place where I was just like, I'm a sinner. This is my sin, and I'm just going to live with it. And I was just a horrible friend. I did not know how to be friends. And I found myself around people who were similarly unhealed. And so we were just like harming each other. My ex was like that. We came out with each other. We were each other's first serious relationship.
Yeah.
We knew that we loved each other and we wanted to do this life together, but we did not have the skills. We were unsure. We projected that on each other. We caused each other harm. And I think that's what took me to therapy, because I realized that I needed to take a step back into myself and find a trusted authority. Somebody I had vetted, I could develop a therapeutic relationship with, whom I had confidence that if I came to them week to week with all my shit, as raw as they were, would be honest with me, would be gentle with me, would teach me how to show myself grace, and would teach me the rudimentary skills of integration. Because I think that's what I also find in a lot of spaces and in community. And I don't know if this shows up in the show. I mean, we're using the show as a metaphor, but ultimately this is a real conversation about real things in our real lives. But I realize that a lot of us who are on the journey to integrating our severed selves, we need experts in the mix, be it medicine women, elders, people who are not necessarily going through the same struggles in that moment, who have gone through it, who have lessons to share. It ended up being a therapist for me, but I needed someone who knew what they were talking about outside of just like the rudimentary stuff I was doing with my partner at the time, trying to heal in relationship. I knew I didn't want to cause undue harm on others. And I don't know that in communities of people who have been marginalized in these different ways, and we're talking queer communities here, but it could be immigrant communities or any sorts of marginalized communities. I don't always find it beneficial when we're all at the same stage of the healing process. I think those situations can lead to immense harm. So now you're dealing with these original traumas, but now you're also dealing with relational trauma that you're developing. We have the childhood trauma thing, we have the adolescence thing, and now as adults, we're in these relationships with romantic partners, with friends, with activist communities, and we're perpetrating the same harm on each other that was done onto us. A lot of it is unconscious, a lack of skill, but those things can be hard to heal from too.
Yeah, I agree.
I've found that it's important to have a trusted elder, therapist, healer, person that we're in consultation with in a structured or semi-structured way to help us navigate the pain of that integration. We need a guide.
I also want to add to that because I took a totally different route when I was healing myself. I gave therapy a chance. I did the talk therapy with the app, and I met with 2 therapists when I moved to Oakland. But I would constantly find myself not being 100% true. And that bothered me because I had difficulty with trusting people. I've had trust issues growing up with elders in my community. So I think I saw that reflected in them, and I would find myself telling half-truths during our session. And I discovered medicine as my form of helper or a guide for me to confront my pain in truth.
When you say medicine, for those who haven't heard.
For those who haven't heard, when I talk about medicine, I mean psilocybin mushrooms, and the type of regimen that I used is microdosing. I had read a bit about it. It took me taking mushrooms on a daily basis to open the space for me to sit and digest not all the trauma, but the present trauma that I was going through with integrating into my new self and with my past grief of feeling abandoned or feeling unloved by my parents, living double lives in my teenage years and my 20s, and confronting all of that in my 30s. Being in a relationship actually made me realize how important it was for me to heal.
Yeah.
Because I would project my insecurities onto my lover. And when they would confront it with me, I would find myself lying, being very avoidant, or just expressing deep rage and repulsion around being seen. So microdosing allowed me to see myself in a way that was non-judgmental, without any ego, and to sit with myself. The hardest thing that happens when you sit with yourself is that you start to think a lot and you can't escape it. And when you start to escape it, that's when suffering happens. You start to judge it, you start to suppress it. And being in that state didn't give me the room to do any of that, but to accept this is who I am. And it's really painful, but you know what? I know it's true. And if I'm experiencing this and others are experiencing this, and they have tried to make me confront it many times, and I have always avoided it, I need to make amends with myself for being such a horrible partner, horrible to my friend in my relationships. Once I reached the stage where I could sit with myself often, non-judgmentally, it really helped open the room for me to find and maintain true connections with people who were actively trying to stay in touch with reality and stay in touch with their true emotions.
So there were people who were a little bit more skilled.
A little bit more skilled to sit with hard conversations.
And because I was going to ask, how do you build the tangible skills of repairing rupture, reconnecting, of practicing interdependence in a way that isn't harmful to self or the other, with mushrooms as the guide? I hear that is certainly a big part of it. And you had people who were not necessarily in the trenches of it at the same time with you.
Yeah.
It may not have been elders or therapists, but there were community members who were confronting the truth with you about you.
It's so hard to integrate when you can't confront the truth about yourself.
I love medicine as a guide for sure, in conjunction with people in the community you can trust to hold you to account.
Yeah.
So I think I wanted to have the conversation on the podcast relating to the show, but tie it into the work that we're doing in community, within ourselves, showing up boldly authentic, integrating parts of ourselves, not allowing the systems of capitalism and the delusion of white supremacy, immigration, and race keep us from integrating. Because as painful as that journey is, for me, being severed has been more painful.
Yeah, because I feel like the pain just doesn't seem worth it at all.
Because it's not true.
Whereas now, when I confront my emotions, they're true. And when I hold someone accountable, I'm able to sit when someone holds me accountable. I think that's a skill that when you're not living in truth, it's going to be so hard for you to hear that you hurt somebody.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be hard for you to hear you were not a good person or a good friend.
It's been rough. It's been rough
Because-
navigating that
Yeah.
with friends.
Because the false truth will lead you down a path of chaos, messiness, abandonment, and just perpetuating that cycle of harm and pain, like you mentioned. But living in the pure truth will lead you to rebel and to act with courage and passion. If you're angry, you're truly angry. And I think sometimes that kind of rage can be taken away from people because you must be peaceful and people pleasy or just cool. But that is so false because what's happening underneath is more insidious and it can manifest in other ways where you don't know how to stand up for people when they're being harmed because you've been quiet this whole
time.
time.
To be rageful.
Essentially.
To rage that keeps the enemy away.
It really does.
I still work around that every day,
I know.
especially when it comes to strangers,
Mm-hmm.
because I think I get scared by my rage because it's so righteous. It's so real. It's so based in truth that it feels like it can burn down everything and it will be totally worth it every single time. People want their ears tickled in friendships, in community. People want their ears tickled. And what I mean by that, they want to be told sweet nothing.
Yeah.
They want to obfuscate truth with I statements and therapy frameworks. And while I'm so grateful for the work I did in therapy, I have had to understand its limitations in a way that feels so visceral because I see other people going through the journey of therapy and how they weaponize all of that to disconnect themselves from their true emotions because it does not meet a therapeutic framework. And I refuse for that to be me. I feel like a couple years ago, I remember thinking, yo, you have healed too much. You have really internalized white supremacist frameworks that has been couched as therapeutic modality. There is nothing wrong with your rage, especially when that rage is based off of, yo, you fucking hurt me. And I'm going to tell you hurt me. And I'm going to tell you exactly how you hurt me. And I'm not going to worry about did I use the appropriate language and the appropriate nonverbal communication techniques. I'm just going to go back to my grandmother. When she was hurt, how did she say it? That's my true north. And how did her mom do it? How do the market women do it? That's my true north. And I think being in spaces and community of people who, number one, it was already difficult for them to go to therapy. Now they've found therapy and they're learning all these things and it's really helping them. So they think they have to do it in this very particular way. And I understand the necessity of that for a time. And perhaps the angst or the friction I experience when it comes to that is because we're all at different parts of our journey and it can feel really frustrating and overwhelming when I am relating to people who are insistent that their part of the journey that asks for them to show up in this very PC, very white way is the right part of the journey, that my rage is wrong, that why do I demand an apology and amends and for things to be done differently? They're just caught off guard by that. And I imagine where I am in my journey, if I met someone who is further along, they might feel the same frustration with me about my inability to temper my rage with something else. I think that's part of being in community as we're doing this work. We're all in different stages of it. How do we still relate with each other? How do we show each other grace? How do we minimize harm? And that's why I'm so big on repair. I low-key don't care about the rupture. I care about after the rupture has happened because the rupture is oftentimes inevitable because we're humans related, reintegrating, struggling, and trying not to die in that reintegration process. So then we're going to rupture. After the rupture has happened, how do we come back together? I think that is the true character of people I stay in relationship with, despite what stage of our journey we're on. And I learned that every day with you in our relationship. We're at different stages in our healing journey. And we rupture and we have to repair even harder. And the reason why we stay connected is because we're both committed to the process of the repair. We're not so much as committed to eliminating ruptures. And I think that's what can help a lot as we are navigating reintegration with community.
Especially living post-trauma, learning what to ask for to make sure the repair doesn't add on to the harm. Because we're not perfect beings. We're going to fuck up sometimes. And the things that helps like a soothing balm after a rupture feels like a, my bad, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to say what I said, or I know that must have hurt. Just know I'm still working on myself.
And fuck my tone, really.
Yeah.
And being able to say, dude, like, my tone was like out of pocket.
Even just recognizing yourself like, fuck, I don't know where that came from. It's like what we're holding, what we're constantly feeling from the collective consciousness, from what's happened to us in the past that wants to express itself. And the hope is that it can be held with softness, because sometimes it feels very knee-jerky, like
just an unskilled expression.
Truly. Yeah. And the hope is to get better skilled at saying exactly what we desire.
And by the time we're about to die, we've mastered
it just a little, just 1% more.
We're just trying to be 1% better.
Perfection is an illusion. There is no escaping the grief and the pain that we carry. There's only more opportunities for us to feel it, to feel held by it, and to repair if it so harms someone that we love.
Absolutely. Okay, so this has been a wonderful conversation.
This has actually been pretty heavy because the more I'm processing the show, the more I feel like I have to go and watch it again.
I might watch it this time with you.
I tried to give a good depiction of it, but it really is a multi-layered story arc. And I didn't get into the real meat of what all of these severed individuals are doing at Lumen. But towards the end, there is a rebellion that happens. They are able to connect with different departments in Lumen and galvanize this. Don't you want to know who you are? Don't you want to fight for the things that you love? Don't you want to have answers to all the questions you've had? Do you really want to be in that state of not knowing? Join in this act of rebellion.
How about I promise you this. You and I rewatch it.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And then we'll come back and talk more about it.
Yeah.
I do want to ask a question to those listening. What's one part of yourself you're reintegrating right now? How do you return to wholeness after years of being fragmented? And what practices, either personal or collective, support your return to self? Your truest self, not marred by conditioning and the need to sever as dictated by the society around us. I'm curious to know what people have to say. Any questions for the audience?
No, that feels really good to tie things in.
Okay, perfect. Before we leave, y'all, we're going to say, if you listen to our podcast and you're in the Bay Area, we host an event in our home. It's called The Gathering, and it's every other month. Next month, it's going to be April 12th, and it's a space to be with each other, non-judgmentally, non-pretentiously. It's an opportunity to be in a beautiful space, having wonderful cocktails,
Deep conversations,
eating amazing food. And next month, our next gathering, we're going to be talking about how to be boldly authentic in a world that has taught us that we need to silence ourselves in order to exist. So if this is something that you find interesting, check out my Instagram account and you'll find the details. We would love to have you. We only have space for 8 people. So yeah. We would love to have you.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. See you next episode. Bye.
Bye. So
If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. The ratings matter so much. The reviews matter. And if you think you know at least one person who can benefit from this, please share it with them. It means the world to me. And until next time, take care of yourself.